And there we go. And as you've probably already realized, I'm a bit of an oversharer. So, but the important thing is, and the reason why I believe in oversharing is when my nieces were younger, they used to say to me, sharing is caring. And I care very, very deeply about women having access to information, research, and resources about how we should be treating our minds and bodies as we approach perimenopause and menopause, as it is a very under-researched and under kind of known area of a woman's life. We know much about puberty, we know much about pregnancy, but we don't know an awful lot about perimenopause and menopause. That is starting to change. As Hayley mentioned in week 1, what happens from 40 is estrogen, the female dominant sex hormone, the female body's protector, starts to fluctuate wildly and eventually completely disappear from our bodies. Estrogen gives us the elasticity of our skin, the strong growing hair, the hardness of nails, the strength of bones and muscle, the moistness in our eyes, the moistness in vaginas for good sex lives, and all of that stuff. So it's no wonder that there is so much going on when we get into our 40s and 50s that we may start to feel confused, overwhelmed, frustrated, mad, angry, undervalued, overlooked, misunderstood, all of these things we may have felt at one time or another from our 40s. And that's okay. It's okay to feel like that because there isn't an awful lot known about a woman 40 plus. And just last month, this came up in the news, and it is the launch of a new 3D female anatomy model that is now being used to train GPs to better treat women. Lots of women get misdiagnosed. The most I hear from menopausal women is that they go to the doctors and are told that they have depression and are given antidepressants. What caught my eye most about this story was that we are in 2022 and only just now are we starting to use a 3D female anatomy model. So as I said, there is still lots of unknown, but things are getting better. As of last year, GPs now have an elective module to take in their training on the menopause. It's still not an absolute given that they will get training on it. Research into menopausal women is so new and so current that this brilliant woman, Dr. Lisa Mosconi, came out with this research project last year. She presented these findings last year, but in fact, the study is still currently ongoing. It's live. Now, what used to be said was that, and this is fact, there are more women that suffer from Alzheimer's than men. And what we used to get told was that that is because women outlive men. So yes, there are more women with Alzheimer's than men. Last year, after years of research, which by the way, is very difficult to fund. When you're trying to fund female-only projects, it's very difficult to get money for. But Dr. Lisa Mosconi said, no, actually, what happens is chemical activity reduces in a menopausal brain, in a woman's brain. From the age of 40, we can start to lay down Alzheimer's plaques, which is much earlier than our male counterparts. So it's not just because women outlive men, therefore we have more Alzheimer's in women. It's actually because brain activity happens earlier and younger in women than men. So I just think all of this stuff, it's not about a battle of the sexes by any means. I just want us to really, what I'd love to land with you today is, there is still so much unknown. So please look out for resources and research and approach people like myself, Beth, Kate, and Caroline, all these people, and Hayley that have presented to you, if you need somewhere to go or want to know something about menopause, then please approach one of us, and we would love to send you to the right place in the first instance. So the reason why I'm here today is because of this lady. She gave birth to me, so I'm here because of that, but also she is my inspiration to doing this work. In this photo, she's about 50 and fairly healthy. In this photo, she is a busy single working mother of 3 kids. She was a business owner. She was a physiotherapist. She had her own practice. That was a caregiving job. She was also looking after me and my 2 younger brothers. We had a dog for the kids, but obviously the kids don't want the dog, so she was looking after him as well. Around the corner lived our grandmother, who was increasingly dependent on my mum, so she was looking after her as well. She had a pretty messy divorce behind her, not the most supportive boyfriend alongside her, and had quite serious financial difficulties. She reminded me a bit of that analogy of the swan on water. Everything was gliding along nicely on the top, but underneath there was serious paddling going on. In her mid to late 40s, she got breast cancer, which meant she couldn't work, so spiraling debt happened. She also had to have extensive chemotherapy. Now, at that time, we didn't know that the chemo brought on the early menopause, so she had that to deal with as well. I didn't speak to her about that then because we just weren't having those sorts of conversations. But thankfully, she came into remission. She got better. She went back to work. But as a result of chemo and menopause, her bones weren't that strong. She wasn't that strong in her body because she just had to go back to work, go back to looking after everybody because she hadn't been there for a good 18 months. So exercise kind of got shoved out the window for her. Then one day she fell down our doorstep, which was only about that high, and what should have only been a sort of sore ankle for a couple of days, which actually turned into a break, and she couldn't work again. So it was pretty depressing, that time of her life. But then unfortunately, I think every mother's nightmare happened. Our youngest brother was killed in a car accident, and as a result she had no reserves left in the tank to deal with the stress of that situation. She had no resilience of mind. She had no strength in her body to give out anymore. And so as a result of this, her cancer returned. And unfortunately, she didn't have the fight to fight it anymore. So she died at the very young age of 53. Now, I am sharing her story because there are so many women in this period of life that is now being coined the sandwich generation, where women in their 40s and 50s have got kids to look after at home. You know where everything is in that kid's life. You know every emotion that they're going through. You know where their gym kit is, what they need to take in for lunch, what activity they're doing after school. Equally, you're there for the partner most likely, or going through some difficult times there. At work, you may have started your own business, or you're reaching the ceiling of work. So it's super busy and you're being called on for your wisdom at work there as well. And perhaps there's also parents that are starting to depend on you a little bit more than before. So where do you come in all of this? And in fact, Zoe Ball on Monday morning on her radio show just said that she had read in the paper on her way to work that morning that 1/3 of women in the UK right now have actively put exercise off their to-do list currently because there is just so much to do. So my mum died about 13 years ago. About 12 years ago, this happened. And this is Total Body Fit Camp. If you are new, or if you know Hertford, you'll recognise perhaps this green hoodie. My brother decided, my surviving brother decided to, inspired by our mum, create a space for women to come 3 times a week in the outdoors to work out for their body and for their mind without a phone and without family, without being called upon, and just to allow them some space physically, mentally, and actually in the outdoors. 6 years ago, I decided to leave the corporate life and moved up to Hertford and joined John at Total Body Fit Camp. And when I joined, what seemed to be happening was lots of women were coming up to me saying, I can't make the sessions, I'm exhausted, I haven't got the time, I haven't got the money, I'm going through this really difficult situation in life at the moment, I don't know what's happening to me, I just want to cry all the time, I don't understand this belly, I've never had a belly before in my life, it won't go away no matter what I do. There was just this kind of epidemic of things kind of uncovering themselves to me. And I said to John, I said, have you dealt with this sort of thing before? And he went, well, not on this scale. So I kind of thought, well, maybe it's because I'm a woman and so people feel a bit more comfortable talking to me about it. But I went away, this was in 2017, and did a bit of research and started to realize it was menopause. So I traveled the country going to different seminars, webinars, to learn as much as I could about the menopause. I then came across this brilliant woman, she's from New Zealand, called Dr. Stacy Sims, and have started following her very, very closely. And what she had discovered very recently was that the large majority of what we know about how to work out and how to eat and what we need to be doing for our bodies, all of that research has been done on an 18 to 22-year-old lad going off to perhaps university. Now, you cannot get further away from a perimenopausal or menopausal woman lacking estrogen, lacking perhaps some mojo, feeling low, lots of people depending on her, to an 18-year-old lad full of testosterone, off to experience the world for the first time without his family, potentially funded by the bank of mum and dad, going out with very little cares in the world, no one to answer to, freedom. Physically, mentally, emotionally, these two people couldn't be further from each other. So what I would love for you to think about today is that everything that you have done in the past, diets, quick fixes, fad things, fastings, punishing your body with workouts that you just don't enjoy and make you feel a little bit sick and you dread going back to, park all of that and just try to perhaps think, right, I need to retrain or reframe what I think about diet and exercise going forwards to get the best out of your body. So what happens from the age of actually 30 in women is that we lose muscle mass very, very quickly year on year, or decade on decade, I should say, actually. And severe muscle mass is called sarcopenia. Now, here you can see on the right, the light grey is the muscle mass and the darker grey is fatty tissue. So what happens as we age is we do start to lose that definition and skin gets slightly looser along the surface of our skin because we're losing the muscle quite rapidly. If you think about ladies of maybe, let's say 65 plus, just you can think about around the joints, skin kind of falls around the joints. That's because the muscle isn't holding up the skin as much anymore. So we have to think about how can we continue to build muscle mass. And one thing I will say here actually is protein. If you go back to Beth's presentation, protein must be included in your diet to help in terms of nutrition to build your lean muscle mass. Now, I'm not crazy about comparison by any means, particularly when it comes to social media, but I just wanted to give you a sort of a visual representation between what I would call kind of a classic menopausal body. Joan in the left picture in 2017 was 72, I believe, and very upset with the way she was looking, this belly. Here you can see what I mean about the knees, perhaps, you know, the muscle not lifting up through the thighs, so the skin starts to just sag slightly over the joints. Over a period of 3 years, and I will caveat this in that her daughter is a bodybuilder, so she has had one-on-one training, but over the period of 3 years, she started to learn to build lean muscle mass. So now at 75, if you go on her Instagram, you can see how she has really built that toning. So I just wanted to show you Joan, because I just want to say it is never too late. Never think, do you know what, I'm the age I am now and I'm never going to change it. It's rubbish. It's always, always changeable if you want it. So loss of muscle mass, 1. 2, the second thing that happens is we lose bone density also quite quickly from the age of 40. Terrible fitness representation here, I know, but we've got the inside of a crunchie and the inside of an aero, and I think I might have nicked this from Davina actually, but it just goes to show what happens to a bone. The density decreases, so a crunchie would be much more difficult to break in half than an aero. Now, bone density is not bone brittleness. It's not that it's going to shatter and break. What it means is that we lose the elasticity in our bone. So bone, quite often when we hit it, sort of bounces back into shape. It's not super, super hard. It's got some softness to it. But bones will break much easier if we're not strengthening them. And in the UK, 1 in 3 women, 65 plus, suffer from a fall. We suffer from falls more so than men. And the rippling effects of what can happen to us as a result of a fall can often result in death no longer than 3 years later. And that's because we become very sedentary. The pressure on our heart gets much more increased because we're just sitting down. We're not exercising the heart. We get depressed. We may still be working, so we can't earn. My mum. We get stressed. So we really have to think about strengthening our bones, because without our bones and without our balance, we do have a much higher risk of falling. Also, what women do have a much higher risk of is osteoporosis. So by strengthening bones, you can help reduce the risks of those 2 things. So what is it that we need to be doing in order to move and keep our bones and muscles strong? In terms of exercise, there are 7 what I call functional movement patterns. At the top, you've got gait. That's your power to go forwards, how we get up from a chair and progress ourselves forwards. We've got a twist, when often we get up from the toilet and we twist around to flush the loo. We've got a pull, perhaps with grandchildren or a child, grabbing that child because they're just about to step out into a road which isn't very safe. You've got lunges, maybe lunging down to pick up something that's dropped onto the floor to pick it up. You've got a push to push open big heavy doors. You've got a hip hinge, she does it very well there, shopping bags, picking up those heavy shopping bags. And we've got a squat, squatting down to get onto the toilet. I have used a toilet reference twice in that description, because I think that is probably one of the things that, as a woman and a man, I'm sure as well, is one of the things that we want to have the most independence for the longest to be able to do on our own. So they're the sort of things that we need to be doing. When I do this in real life, whenever I put this slide up, I hear, and that's the reaction I want, because this is just a bit of a aside. The thing I want us to stop doing is hating the body that we are in. There are changes happening. It is the evolution of a woman, which is a beautiful thing. A female body goes through puberty, perhaps pregnancy, and now perimenopause, the 3 Ps. We should not be hating it. We just need to adapt the way we're treating it. So please start to think about speaking kindly to yourself and not punishing or hating the body we have. So I think a lot of us grew up on this sort of stuff on GMTV, and Lizzie, I think her name was, with the crazy lovely hair. What we must not be doing anymore is kind of really long, drawn out, high intensity exercise classes. What you need to be doing is high intensity interval training. And what that means is going from, let's say, 40 seconds of high intensity work to 20 seconds of nothing, rest, or a much lower intensity exercise. So you're peaking and then you're taking it down, peaking and taking it down. The reason for this is because women of 40 and beyond, what happens is that our cortisol levels slowly over time just start to slowly build, which means that often we are in a sort of a heightened state of stress for a prolonged period of time. If you are constantly feeding your body these high, crazy, hour-long aerobic workouts, you are just feeding that cortisol. You're keeping your body in that stress response place. What happens in a stress response, it's also called the fight or flight nervous system, is that our body goes back to way back when, and Caroline touched on it last week, when our body was, when we were hunter-gatherers, and we may not have known when we were going to eat next. So our body in a stress response goes, right, I need to hang on to all this sugar and all this stuff that this person has put in me, because I don't know when I'm going to eat next, because I am seriously stressed out. But actually, in real fact, in today's lifetime, we eat again quite quickly. So we put it back in and then we feed it more stress because you go back to work or you've got kids or whatever it might be. So we're kind of living in a very stressed place for a lot of the time, which can play havoc with our weight. So high intensity interval training, not high impact, high intensity. Now, excuse my language, sorry, Hertford Council for this one. But when you're menopausal, again, this is Dr. Stacy Sims, you need to think lift heavy, I'll say stuff. So just like I said, it's not about an hour-long aerobic workout. I want you to now start to think about lifting weights. And I think for years, women have always kind of been put off lifting weights for 2 reasons. We don't want to look like Arnie, and we just simply don't know what to do in a gym. You know, it's quite intimidating, even today, to go into a gym, which is, I would say, my gym probably 75% male. When I go in there, grunting, groaning, and, you know, it's like, what do I do? And so it can be quite a brain thing to get into a gym to lift stuff. But you start at your base level. So if you have never lifted before, you start with your body weight. For those of you that have tried a press up before, lifting your body weight can be quite tough. So start at a base level, and then you can either get some coaching or you can coach yourself online through YouTube videos, buy some weights. Aldi's are fantastic for weights. And just start low and slowly start to build, but do start to build, because that is what is going to build your muscle mass. It is what is going to give you your toned and defined look. And this is the point where I want to say, as women, the scales from 40 and beyond will go up. It's a matter of fact. It is going to be less easy as time goes on to keep bringing that weight down. What we have to think about more is our body composition, the way we look and the way we feel in our clothes. That's what we need to be thinking about a bit more now. Oh, I have not changed the slide, and I slapped myself on the wrist for not using a female football team here. But if you've ever watched a football match and you have seen the football players warming up before they go on the pitch, they're jumping up, they're ducking and diving, they're weaving in and out, and this is called plyometric training. Plyometric training increases your balance and bone strength and health. You will have to take any injuries into account before doing this, but there are lots of different ways to get plyometric training into your workouts. But think of it as going from one foot to the other, or little jumps up and down, or weaving in and out, changing direction. So we've got high intensity interval training, lift heavy bleep, and plyometric training. The one thing that gets overlooked and undervalued by women because of what we've been marketed about all these years, about these, keep going, exercise, 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 rest. When we get to 40 and beyond, we must include rest days from exercise, relaxation from daily stresses, and good sleep. These are what are going to contribute to bringing those cortisol levels down. And if weight management is a difficult thing for you, I know it feels counterintuitive that you should rest and relax, but you do need that stuff in your life to help control your weight. By taking rest days from exercise, when you start to lift heavy stuff, imagine that's a muscle. What happens when you lift is you create tiny, tiny tears in your muscle. By resting and eating protein about half an hour, within half an hour window of working out, you then knit those muscle tears back together and build the muscle stronger, so it gets closer to the surface of the skin and gives you that toned and defined look time and again. I've used Amy here because, to give an analogy, when somebody has a mental health issue or has addiction problems, what they do is they go away, they retreat, they go to rehab to get better. They come away from society and they do work on themselves to rebuild, to regenerate, to recover. And that's what we have to do when we take those rest days from exercise. Sleep does get more difficult as we age. We eventually need less of it, but also it can just be slightly elusive. So really start to think about your sleep hygiene, which basically is a fancy way of saying think about your sleep routine and how you start to get yourself prepared to go to bed. For example, I have no screens on beyond 9 p.m. Everything goes off and it's reading, so that I can ensure that I've got no blue light flashing at me, keeping me alert and awake, because I know I've got to get my sleep to make myself kind of productive for the next day. So to take away from today, shift happens. This is a chapter in a book I read by a brilliant woman called Amanda Thebe on menopause. I just thought it was quite clever, because shift does happen. It is the evolution of us women. It doesn't happen to men. We go through these amazing kind of waves throughout our life, and we just have to learn how to deal with them. So what I would love for you to take away is to think about functional strength training. Think about training in those patterns that I told you, going forwards, twisting, lifting, lunging. Start to think about lifting heavy stuff. If you've never done it before, start with your body weight. Women are not small men. We are half the population. I think the ratio current, I'm not going to say that stat because it's gone out of my head, but we are half the population, just about. What is great for men is not necessarily the same for women. If you are somebody that fasts, happy to take questions on that. But as women, we should naturally fast anyway, and it's called going to bed. Fasting can put your body into that elevated stress response. So just think about the length of fasting that you do. Eat plenty of protein for muscle mass, and please eat carbs. No carbs before marbs. I had a friend who went to Marbella once, and she, the waiter said, "Would you like bread for the table?" And she said yes, and all the waiters came around and clapped because they were so happy that somebody was eating them. Please eat carbs. For me, what I imagine it as is when you eat protein after a workout, the carbs almost act as a bit of a bus and take the protein to the muscles, but just be selective of what those carbs are and head back to Beth's talk for that. I want you to forget how you trained and ate as a youngster. What was fit for purpose then isn't for now. I don't know about you, but in my 20s, I could skip a couple of meals in the week and get into that little black dress on a Saturday night feeling great. Doesn't happen anymore. Rest. Please rest. And that doesn't mean just rest days or just sleep. It also means try to factor in relaxation, do things that take your mind off of the daily grind and stress of life. And I want you to know that it's not a disaster. It can at times feel really tough, teary, trialing, but there are ways of managing it. So please be kind to yourself and talk to each other. That's what this is about. It's about educating yourself, and it's about sharing what you learn, because remember, sharing is caring, and ask for that help. And the one thing that I think us women just do brilliantly together, as well as talking, is we can laugh about it. And I think that's what we should be doing, because at times it can be super maddening and feel like you're at your wit's end. But when you speak to that friend and you have that good belly laugh, it can just really lift the situation that you're in. So I'm Facebook Woman on Instagram. I try to just drop lots of hints and helpful bits and bobs on there as simply as I can. I'm also an online coach and do a program for women that's 6 months long there to help you retrain and reframe exercise, eating, and improve self-esteem. And that's actually a chateau. I've just come back from hosting a retreat there for exactly the reason I told you about relaxation and rest and recuperation. So I do those sorts of things as well. So that is me. I'll just pop this back up. So yes, thank you for being here. Beth, I don't know if there's any questions.
Yeah, thanks, Emily. That was great. Yeah, there's a few questions, so I'll just start at the top. One comment here, good comment I thought, saying it's good to hire a PT to get some technique sessions to learn how to use free weights. So if you're starting out, I'm guessing that's probably a good thing to think about, Emily.
Yeah, definitely. And you can do that for as long or as short a period that you need to, really. Yeah, I highly recommend that, not just because it's what I do, but yes, yeah. I think it's a great thing to do.
Siobhan asks, are there any recommendations of a strength plan to use that builds up to lifting heavy weights? free if possible. So I'm guessing she maybe means something online, perhaps.
Yeah, something online. There are some really good people to follow. Amanda Thebe is fantastic. Stacy Sims is also great. In terms of free plans, I'm not sure. Let me come back to that. Okay. I would check that one out.
And also recommendations on how many times a week we should be doing strength training, HIIT and plyometric.
Yeah.
Ideally,
you want to be moving every day. So one thing I didn't mention in there is your step count. You ideally want to be taking around 7,500 to 10,000 steps a day. Included in that, I would say 4 to 5 times a week. They don't have to be long. Some sessions I do are 20 minutes, but you want the intensity and the heavy lifting within those 20 minutes. What happens, unfortunately, as we do age, although we think, oh yeah, I'm going to slow down a little bit, we do need to pick it up a bit. We do need to train more, but we just need to make sure the sort of training we are doing is not the high intensity, long drawn out stuff. It's the short, sharp bursts, and it's the lifting heavy. So I would say ideally 4 to 5, not including your daily step count.
Okay. And then Dion says, I'm doing couch to 5K. Is this a good idea? Currently run for 28 minutes, which is hard, and get some lower leg pain. So I have to make sure I stretch and rest, but otherwise okay. Should I change to interval runs?
No, but do interval runs
as well.
I think the couch to 5K, from memory, I think they do at some point do some interval training. In fact, I think you start off doing the interval training, walk a bit, run a bit. There is a fantastic podcast. Dr. Chatterjee spoke to a female running coach. I can't recall her name. Everything I've mentioned today, I will put in the email with the recording. But she's a running coach, and she said that actually all of us should be able to run. Plenty of us can't as we go through life because of old injuries and things, and so we have to stop running, unfortunately. But running is one of those instinctive things that we do as soon as we can walk. You chase after a ball. But we just need to learn how to run properly again. And she gives some brilliant tips on how we should be running. Lots of us run in this position with our chins forwards. You need to be thinking about being upright and having, I always think about that Churchill nodding dog. You want to have a nice, loose, bouncy head on the top of your shoulders. When you run, we don't use our bums enough. Each step you take, squeeze a butt cheek, right, left, right, left, right, left. The bum is the steering wheel of your body. So if you get that bit tight and strong, then everything else is kind of going to follow suit. So no, don't give it up. I think it's a brilliant thing to do. Include interval training and maybe watch that Chatterjee podcast with the running coach for really great tips on how to run. Okay.
And then Paula asks, what if you have arthritis in your left foot? And if you do too much, it flares up. What would you suggest?
Yeah, it's, I work with lots of people with similar, and it's just about adapting. So not doing anything as intense, really being careful about things like lunges. I could, if you want to email me, Paula, Emily@phasefitwoman.com. I'd be happy to talk you through about the different things that you can do, but it's about adapting and not stopping completely. Please don't stop completely.
Yeah. From personal experience, actually, I have a history of rheumatoid arthritis, which really impacted my hands and feet. And I know even things like Pilates, you can get irons, you can get all kinds of things that can help you still do the exercises, can't they? But just take the pressure off the joints that are problematic.
Absolutely. And in fact, on my Instagram, but there was a feed a couple of weeks ago that said about arthritis, the best thing that you can do is exercise, but within your limitations.
Yeah. Okay. What else have we got? Others. Katya's asking about the previous recordings. I don't know if that's one you can look at on the chat, Emily, and she's saying she didn't receive the previous recordings. You were talking about that earlier, weren't you? I think
yes, last week didn't go out. Katya, if you could just pop your email to me privately, I will make sure that you get that.
Yeah, I think there was a bit of a mix-up, wasn't there, last week? Paula saying thank you. Trampoline, smiley face.
If you can do it and not wee yourself, absolutely. That's the only thing I hear about trampolines, is women find it difficult because of
pelvic floor,
bladder problems and pelvic floor. Yeah, which, by the way, there is some fantastic things that you can get now, pessaries and the such, which are like silicone, a bit like moon cups almost, that can help women do things like star jumps now without the fear of leaks. But yeah, trampolines are great because they help your joints. You have to really keep them in a good position, good for cardio work. They're probably quite a long class of high intensity training. So I wouldn't do lots and lots, but I think it's a great class.
Okay. Siobhan's saying she has arthritis in hands and feet and has found it's responded well to slow and steady build up in strength training. Yeah. As your muscles get stronger, it takes pressure off your joints. Yes. Dion's asking, how much protein should we eat per day to support exercise and muscle?
There you go. Do you want to take that one?
Yeah, so I am not a specialist in sports nutrition at all, not my area. But the general advice is anything from 0.75 to 1, potentially a little bit more gram of protein per kilogram of body weight is what you should be aiming for on your protein. And do you remember when we looked at the plate, when you look at the kind of plate as a whole, a quarter of your plate should be protein.
Yeah.
That helps.
Yeah. I think I don't think you could ever really overeat protein, if I'm honest. I think just get it in whichever which way. You know, lots of it on your plate, I think is a really good thing.
There is a limit to how much you can absorb in any one sitting. So if you're going over and above that, I suppose maybe think about eating it in smaller, maybe in 5 portions rather than 3 portions, for example. You can't just eat all your protein in one meal because your body won't be able to assimilate it.
Yeah, and for vegetarians that do struggle with that, there are lots of other ways now as well, powders and things that can help that are vegetarian and vegan, as well as legumes and things.
Okay, so Vestie's saying for weight loss, so this is, if you're actively eating more protein, 1.6 to 1.8 grams per kilogram of body weight. And for muscle toning, I guess that's more building, like almost like bodybuilding.
Yeah.
2.4 grams. So we should, that gives you a range there.
Yeah.
The official NHS, I think, is 0.75, but most in the nutrition would say that's a bit low.
Yeah.
Any more questions, ladies? Have I missed anything off? I don't think so.
Great.
No, just lots of people saying thank you.
Thank you for joining. And
could I ask one more question?
Yeah.
I thought, why am I typing when I can ask the question? So at the moment, I have started weight training, but I'm using a low weight at the moment and doing 15 reps and doing kind of circuit style. For me to develop strength in terms of what you're suggesting, how many reps? I guess I should be going heavier, but how many reps would you suggest?
Yeah.
Instead of 15?
Yeah, got it. So what you are looking for really is 8+. Anything under, I would say, 8 reps is when you progress on to the next weight up, isn't going to make a huge lot of impact and isn't going to be great for muscle memory. So I would be looking at, if you go up in weight, start at 8 reps.
Okay.
Does that answer you, Siobhan?
It does, yeah. I think I need to, decrease the reps and increase the weight. Yeah,
exactly. Increase weight. Keep progressing. Definitely, that would be my big thing.
Just as a follow-on question, So let's say I'm doing 3 sets of 8. Would you suggest for the first set of reps that I should be slightly lighter than the next 2?
No,
just
then you have to start heavier.
Start heavier and then decrease.
Yeah.
Okay. Even for old muscles like mine?
Yeah, you're not old. Not at all. Absolutely.
I have a 34-year-old daughter, so I'm older than I look.
No, I would say start heavier and then drop. Yeah.
Okay.
Really use your breath. Really use the exhale on the effort on that difficult part. Blow out as you lift that weight up. That is going to help give you that extra push to get you where you need to be. And then if you need to, then drop it down. Make sure you're having a good amount of rest in between those sets, at least a minute. Cool. Good stuff.
I think that's
sorry.
Oh.
I did have one more question. Sorry. Is it true that as I get older, I'm probably finding it is true for me, but I will ask the question, that I need a longer warm up before I start lifting?
Yeah, I mean, it depends what time of day you are working out. It depends what you've eaten. It depends how much water you've had. But yes, at our sessions, we have at least a 7-minute warm up. And a warm up is dynamic stretching. So it is stretches that move. At the end of the workout, you do stretches that you hold. At the beginning of the workout, you do movements, stretches that move. So squats, lateral lunges, forward lunges, things that are going to move you and warm up joints, muscle, ligaments, bone, and all of that. So yes, I would say good 7 to 10 minutes. If you're doing it first thing in the morning, you're going to be a little bit stiffer because you've just got out of bed at the end of the day. And if it's a warm day, you're going to be a bit more supple because you're a bit looser from the temperature and the mobility that you've done throughout the day.
So I have never really fasted in the past, but I'm trying at the moment eating between 12 and 7. I tend to work out in the morning, maybe 2 to 3 times a week. I find when I get to, I've been surprised I've been able to work out on an empty stomach, which is the first time in my life I've always imagined I'm weaker before, but I find it's not the case. Is that detrimental to do that, to work out in a fasted state, and then not to be eating protein because I'd normally be finished by 9:30 or so, and not to be eating protein until, let's say, after 12?
It's not an ideal situation, from research. Stacy Sims' research, most recent stuff, has said women do not perform well in a fasted state. And we need that protein afterwards within a half-hour window to rebuild that muscle. So to be honest with you, Siobhan, it depends on what your goal is.
To be honest, a friend was doing it, but she needs to lose a major amount of weight. I don't need to lose any weight. I guess because I had been tending to eat until quite late in the night.
Yeah.
But I'm not, I don't need to lose weight, but I was finding that's severely impacting my sleeping. So I thought if I introduced this rule, which I have found easier, not to eat in the evening, but yeah, maybe I just,
You only need something as simple as, say, half a banana and a handful of nuts before a workout, because that's going to give you the power. If you're starting to lift and want to progress your lifting, then you do need something in you to be able to do that. And it also helps rest and recovery and repair as well. Yeah.
One last question then here. Does Emily run HIIT classes? I'm assuming yes. Your opportunity to advertise.
We do, yes. A Total Body Fit Camp in real life is at Simon Ball School and Woodson Park in Simon Ball's in Hertford. And they're a mixture of HIIT, strength and training and mobility, really ideally for us sort of women. And I also do some online coaching as well, a 6-month program where we do it remotely, and that's Phase Fit Woman. They're fantastic classes. Thank you, SJ.
Lots of people saying amazing classes now.
People down there, that's what it is.
Great. Okay, I think that's it then, ladies. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you for your time and your questions.
See you, next week for the last one.
Yes, Kate, GP practice nurse, come with questions about menopause in the workplace, sexual health, HRT, everything that we haven't covered, she'll probably pick up, scoop up, and talk about.
Pelvic floor.
Pelvic floor, yes. Great. Thanks, everyone. Lovely to see you all.
Thanks, Emily.
Thanks, Emily.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.